Good evening, everyone, and welcome to The Shift. This tonight is really when the shift does hit the fan, because we're going to be talking about something really, really serious tonight, and something that I know is in most people's lives in some way or another, and can take you from being a healthy, happy person to being almost non-existent in your own life. It's called fear, and it's called worry and anxiety and jealousy and these things that we make up in our mind, all these bad things that we make up are going to happen. And most of the time they never transpire. But we've conditioned our mind to perceive them. And so most of the time we do find in some way they have really, really affected our lives. Fear is something that I shun with all of my being. I have one fear that I know is really cognizant in my life, and that is the fear of heights. But it's a logical fear of heights. And I don't know if I was a bird in a past life or whatever, but I have a fear, or I don't have a fear, I have vertigo, is what they call it. It's just I just want to fall. I feel like I can soar. It's hard to resist that feeling. So I don't put myself in the path of that very often. However, I do mountain climb. And the thing is, it doesn't paralyze my life at all, because I know that if I had to get out of a burning building and the only way out was scaling the outside of the building, I would have no qualms in doing that. And see, that's the difference that we're talking about. We all have fears where we're afraid of a spider and we go, or a snake, and, we just won't touch them. But then there's that paralyzing fear that happens when you can't do anything, when you actually are out of your mind, where you can't save yourself. And this happens in a lot of different ways. It happens in our relationships, when our relationships might be not in the place that we want them to be, and we don't do anything at all. We get certain little clues about things in our lives that aren't going well, and we don't look after them at the time, and then all of a sudden they blow up. Yeah, I've had a lot of times in my life that I've been extremely uncomfortable with what's been going on. I mean, I went through a divorce. My dad died when I was younger. I was in a car accident. I dealt with cancer, dealing with the after effects of cancer. Some very unpleasant things in my life. But it doesn't stop me. But I'm not going to say it doesn't tick me off, because it certainly does. And anybody who says that it doesn't in the core of them at some point in the darkness of the night, or laying in the bathroom, in the tub, soaking, thinking about it, they're not telling you the truth. And that's the reality is. We all have those fears. When something bad happens to us, can we get out of it? And I can remember back, and I really tried to think this through before I got on the call, is what was I thinking the day that I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer? What went through my mind? And I can remember one thing. I can remember this. I can remember thinking to myself, some people survive. Now, I know it's not very many, but some people do. I think I can be one. I think I might want to try. I wasn't confident. I wasn't confident at all. But even in that moment, whatever built up to that point, the other bad things that happened to me in my life that taught me that I could make it through it, and I could be maybe not entirely happy with the results, but I could come to terms with those results. I could be happy with other circumstances. I could learn to be happy. I knew all of those things brought me to that moment where I also knew that I could do something to get myself out of the situation that I was in, even though I had no idea at the time what that was going to be. But there was that little bit of hope. And see, that's the difference between the fear I'm talking about, fear of spiders, fear of whatever, and the hopelessness. I know I'm not a psychologist, but I know that feeling. And the one other time I can remember, because I was much, much younger, so this resonates a little bit better, I think, with what we want to talk about here today, is when I was in my car accident and waking up, at 15 years old with them saying, you're not going to walk again. Now, at that point, I was a Taekwondo champion. I had worked very hard to get there. I had a life ahead of me. I was, into sports and into things like that. And that was probably, I believe, the darkest moment of my life. Because at that age, I didn't have any experience to deal with that. It was just simply somebody said, your life has been taken away. Even though is really the reality of it was one leg. He overstated the situation. And I had a really good physiotherapist who got me through the whole thing. But at that moment, I didn't have the coping skills that I have now today. And I know many of you don't either. And it could be for a lot of reasons. Maybe you skated pretty well through your life to this point. Maybe a lot of bad things haven't happened, but your relationship is going south and you don't even know what to do about it. Maybe with the economy, yours is one of the house and the mortgages that are upside down right now, and you're going to lose something. I was talking to somebody the other night, and I said, you know what? We are just simply too attached to material things. We're too attached to these things can do a lot of harm to us. We don't have our own inner confidence at sometimes that can hold us throughout it. We're holding on. That's what makes that's a lot of times that's what makes us. The car, the house, all of those things. If we start off with the fact that they simply don't matter, that isn't what is going to make us happy. I can live in a shoebox. In fact, I'd be happy in a shoebox because there's less to clean. So we have to think about that. What are we putting into our lives? What are we filling up with every day? And what are we fearful of? And why are we fearful? And I've said this before. My mom used to make me crazy. Crazy, crazy. Because every day it was something she was fearful of. Don't do this. Be careful of that. The sky is going to fall. And it used to aggravate me to no end. Like, why do you have to say that? It just puts a damper on the world. But why do you borrow trouble? And that's what we do. When we allow fear to come as part of our lives, and it's all those things. It's the insecurities. It's the disappointments. And it's that big other F word, failure. We fell down. People laughed at us. People ridiculed us. People said we didn't do it well enough. It was all our fault. And that all filled up our bucket. And we walked around with it every day, and we still walk around with it today. So, what are we going to do about that? What are we going to do? Well, I'm going to start off today with I have faith. Now, I don't necessarily mean that it's faith in God or faith in any kind of entity whatsoever, although I do. But I'm not saying that you have to. What I am saying is that you have to have faith in yourself. You have to have faith that inside you, you're more superior and you're stronger than any obstacle, any fear, any jealousy, any insecurity. You're stronger than that. There's nothing that can get the better of you unless you actually allow it to. And I know that we do. I know we do. We all do. I can say that sometimes. I do. But I know I have the tools in place for me that I recognize it and I can put the brakes on pretty fast. I'm going, what are you thinking? What are you thinking? And I laugh at myself sometimes too, because I'm going, okay, if you're really, and this is where the logic part comes for me, and this might be a tool you can use. If you're really afraid of heights, if you're really afraid of heights, then would you get in a plane? And I get in them, weekly. Right? Would I do those things? No, if I was really afraid. Right? So I'm just afraid that the bird that I was in the past is going to take off one of these days, and I am not going to have the wings to support my weight. That's logical. But it's not something that is imagined. It's an actual real feeling that I have. And I've actually had people analyze it. And they do talk about past lives and different things like that. But it's something, again, that doesn't take a precedence in my life and doesn't harm me. And I think today that's what we want to differentiate between. Is it harming you? Are you able to cope with it? Because sometimes we can have fears and we can cope. Or are we paralyzed with fear? So we have to talk about that, and we have to get some tools in place that are going to allow you to make it through this. Step by step, like we say, every single week that we're here. Nothing will change overnight. It's just simply not going to happen. We have to start somewhere, though. And now I'm going to start with analyzing that fear. Where does it come from, and why is it there? Why do you feel insecure about yourself? And secondly, if you feel insecure, say, about your weight, are you really doing something about it or not? Because if you're not, that's borrowing trouble. Linda, what say you?
Oh, wow, Mark, so much. I love analyzing fear, and where does it come from is a great question. Why am I afraid? What am I afraid of? And as we start digging into those questions and finding answers, I think another really good question to ask is it true? When you're thinking about what you're afraid of, and you're thinking, if I do this, I'm going to fail. Where did that come from, and is it true? Have other people done this and succeeded? Well, if they have, then that statement is obviously false. It is not true at all. And what we're doing is we're digging into some paradigms that we have, some old conditioning that was planted there long before we had the ability to even know that ideas and thoughts were being planted in our mind. It's actually the subconscious part of our mind. And it's just like you said, I think parents all over the world, when children are young, oh, don't do that, you might hurt yourself. Don't climb that tree, you might fall out and break your arm. Don't go out with that friend, they're only 16, you're going to have a car accident. Mm-hmm. What we're doing as parents, even though we have our best intentions are to protect our children, but what we're doing is we're planting those seeds of fear. And those fear seeds are going to come up in other instances throughout our lives. Oh, I can't go into this business because it might not be successful. Or I can't apply for that job because it has this list of 10 qualifications. I have 9, but I don't have that one. And so, therefore, I don't qualify for that job. Illness, huge. Because, Mark, I know that without totally recognizing it until it hit me square in the face, I know that I had a fear that I was going to get cancer because my mom did. I wasn't really acknowledging it until I came face to face with somebody who said, Linda, you have breast cancer, and it's got to come out of there. And the funny thing is, though, Mark, while I really expected to be totally overcome with fear, with those butterflies, with this oh no dread moment, it was at that moment that I felt free. I felt relief. And you know what, Mark? I think that I felt that because it had been several years since my mom's diagnosis, and she basically come through it just fine, and she's a wonderful, healthy, vibrant woman. And so I think in between that and some additional work that I had been doing on myself and my own thought processes, all of a sudden I was free of that one nagging fear that had been planted, because now I was coming face to face with it, and I knew that I was very healthy, and I am very healthy and very vibrant. And I suddenly realized that I'm going to be okay. I can come through this just fine. and I'm going to come through on the other end, and I am going to be able to show other women how to walk this path too, without that overwhelming, paralyzing fear that I actually thought that would happen to me, and it didn't. But Mark, it's not to say that I haven't ever felt that. As you were talking, I was going back in time, and I have not had, thankfully, some of the things that you've had happen to you. I wasn't in a car accident or anything like that, but I can remember, because I was very adventuresome, and I was a part of a group of Girl Scouts that actually went out and had fun. We were doing things every weekend, camping out and exploring caves and all of this fun stuff. And we had actually gotten a guide or a teacher to teach us how to rappel, which is like tie yourself to a rope and climb down a cliff. Now we had already done that. Our first exposure to that was he had us jump out of a tree, and that's totally against everything that you were taught to do as a child. But yeah, we jumped out of the tree using the equipment, and then a couple of times we had done I think that the cliff was about 60 plus feet, and we did that, and it was really a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that. A little bit of adrenaline at first, a little bit of nerves at first, but I can't say that it was necessarily fear. But one time we were exploring a cave, and we came to a point where we were going to rappel down a certain part of the cave, and we had to kind of jump away from the cliff and let our rope out so that we didn't come smashing into the face, because then there was a void, and then we could go down the rest of the way. The funniest thing happened to me, and I couldn't explain it. I got to the point where it was time to drop my hips and push away from the cliff so that I could swing way out, let rope out, and then come back in and be in that void. I looked over my shoulder, and I couldn't see the bottom. We had we had a lantern that was on a makeshift ladder over to the side, and it was disturbing the view that I would have had at the bottom. So I couldn't see anything at the bottom. And this overcoming, paralyzing fear took hold of me, and it took hold of me so tightly that if I was feeling it physiologically, my legs started shaking so badly that I didn't have control of my left leg at all. And I was at the point of no return. It was either I'm going to have to just go or try to start taking some steps and pull myself back up the rope. And I couldn't do it. I finally, after being talked and coached, I was able to climb back up to the top. But it was so interesting to me, because even after all of these times that I had been rappelling, that one time I was so overtaken with fear I couldn't move. I could not do what I had planned to do, and I wound up going back up to the top, and finally, and I climbed down the ladder to be with my friends instead of rappelling. But I couldn't explain it, because we went out rappelling again, but those were other times when I could actually see the bottom. So I think it was the fear of the unknown.
Linda,
go ahead.
I just need to stop you there, because I think that's the thing. It's the fear of the unknown, right? Your imagination. What were you imagining in that moment?
I was imagining that I wasn't going to be able to push off enough, and I was going to come and smash my head on the rock. That was one thing that went through my head.
But it was something that hadn't happened. Right, but see, that's the thing, and that's a big. I'm glad, so glad that you actually brought this adventure up today, because that is so paramount in what fear is. It's imagination. It's imaginary things. Like, here's the thing, and let's talk about the snake thing, right? What if you were in a cave of snakes, and somebody told you none of them would bite you? Absolutely, without a doubt, they're all benign little garter snakes, or whatever they're called, garter snakes. And they weren't going to hurt you. They might feel a little creepy, but they're not going to hurt you. And so you would walk in the cave with that confidence and faith that they weren't going to hurt you. Conversely, to someone who said, well, I don't know. And I only say this because it was funny, because last night I was watching the and it just happened to be, I was in the room and saw it on TV, and I thought, oh, what's this all about? And they were in with these snakes. And all that, The Rock said to them was, there could be snakes in there. But he didn't say anything about them. Now, the logical part, you might go, well, I'm on a TV show. Would they really allow me to get killed on TV? But I'm sure that you would start imagining things because you're in the dark and you can't see things. It's like when you went through the fun houses when you were a kid, right? And that little wisp of something would hit you across the cheek. You were imagining all sorts of monsters that were going to jump out at you. And really, that's what fear is. But look what it did to you. And so many people have not been through things that have happened in our life. I keep thinking about, too, Linda, what would have changed had your mother had breast cancer and died from breast cancer? Your mom, how would that have affected maybe the way that you were thinking?
It would have been huge, Mark, and, of course I can't go back and try to imagine that. I know that the very first thought that probably would have gone through my mind is, oh, no, I'm going to die like my mom. Would I have taken a different course even in my treatment? Maybe. Because one of my initial thought processes that I had before I started asking more questions was, well, I'm just going to have him take both my breasts off and I'll be done with it. And I was making that decision, again, based on the fact that my mom had a lumpectomy. It did come back, and so she later had a mastectomy, and she's been fine ever since. But thank goodness, two things. Number one, I started asking questions and was able to connect with some people who could do some extra testing and help answer some of those questions. But number two, Mark, I've come to realize through study that our mind, our thoughts, have the majority of the influence on the health of our body. It takes work. It takes belief, again, going back to the faith, that our body heals itself, and it can heal itself, and belief in the powerful tool that we have, which is called our body, and how our mind, our thoughts influence the very atoms, our cells, our DNA, if we allow it to. I mean, this vehicle that we've been given, this body that we've been given to live and experience life through, is truly an amazing self-sufficient vehicle, again, if we allow it to be. When we allow doubt and worry and fear to come into the equation, it starts us down a very destructive path. Fear is really getting emotionally involved with doubt and with worry. And from there, we have the fear, we have anxiety, and all of this negative emotion is suppressed inside of us. It can't get out. And so it causes dis-ease or disease, and it causes disintegration. Because we are built to expand and grow. We are here as part of creation. And the way we get to that part of creation is to gain knowledge, to gain understanding, and we do that through study. So thank goodness I am a lifelong student of personal growth and things like our mind and our body and how they work together. So when we approach it from a standpoint of knowledge, of understanding, of faith, then we actually find ourselves in this feeling, this sense of well-being, which again is a very positive emotion, and that emotion has to be expressed, and we find ourselves at ease, and we find ourselves in a creative or the creation mode instead of the disintegration mode. Does that make sense to you, Mark?
Makes sense to me, Lee. And one thing, too, I was just thinking of that. Do you ever have doubts that when you cut your finger it will heal?
Zero. I know it'll heal.
Exactly. And I think that's because why? Because it was proven to you, right, Linda?
Right. We all get
And
stuck in that I have to see it first to believe it.
right. That's the problem. It's that we measure things by things we know, and we don't, you're exactly right, Linda, we don't have the faith. We just, in whatever it is. And I guess, too, if you're not strong within yourself, then you better get religion. You better get knowledge. You better get something that's going to allow you to make it through it and to understand it, because realistically, that's what it is. When it gets right down to it, we're emotional people, and thank goodness we are, because if we weren't, we wouldn't be able to have joy and happiness and exuberance and passion about things. We'd just be these one-note people, and nothing would be worth even working for. But faith in itself, it's a learned process. And I know that, Linda, you know that. We both take time in our lives to research things like this. Be curious about it. But I also know that when you're in the depths of that darkness, it's very, very difficult to see any silver lining. So all you have to do is say it again and again and again and again. There's no need to fear. And then put the logic behind it, because I know I will heal, because I know my relationship will get better, because I know this house is not who I am. This job is not who I am. You know, and if you say that over and over and over and over enough times, eventually you're going to get it. Your subconscious mind will start accepting it. And it'll start believing it, because that's the reality, my friends. The reality is your conscious mind makes decisions. Your subconscious mind just goes, okay, that's what you believe, I'm in it. So you get to choose what your subconscious mind will do. And it's the most powerful thing, because it reacts by instinct before you can actually make that thought the next time around. It just needs to be trained. You just need to train yourself. So it's just like Linda last week talking about building muscles, building your instincts. This is the same thing. Building your faith is the same thing. It doesn't happen overnight. Things won't be perfect tomorrow. You can't close your eyes, wake up, and a genie overnight made your life perfect. But you can certainly feel better. And again, if you're down in those deep, dark places where you should never be, because they're dangerous places to be, then you need to seek out the help to get you from there. And you know, that's a fear in itself, because we don't want to seek help. That would make us feel like we couldn't handle it ourselves. Well, guess what, my friends? We're human beings, and with human beings come infallibilities.
Exactly, Mark. And you know, one of the very freeing things for all of us to remember is it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks or says. All that matters is as you and what you think and you feel and you say. So even if you're in the doldrums, as Mark said, you know, get some help. And isn't it wonderful that there are people out there who can help lift you up to help you to feel better? And when you do that, you start looking for other things that make you feel better. And when you start following that path, you realize that you start doing amazing things that you never would have even dreamed of in the past, and you're not even afraid, because that fear feeling, that paralyzing fear feeling, has gone away, because you keep looking inside of you toward those things that make you feel good, that make you feel much better than you did before, even if it's stepping out and doing something that you've never done before. You know, there's a huge difference between being totally fearful and being excited about doing something new and something different. If you're looking at those two feelings, follow the excitement, the doing something new and something different, instead of following that paralyzing, fearful feeling.
Absolutely. The yin and the yang of life, right, Linda? You know, just like fear can debilitate you and stop you in your tracks. Overcoming that fear can just set you free and take you on to the greatest ever had in your life. And it's the most, you're right, the most exhilarating. The you know, like anything, I can imagine, because I don't remember, but I know some people that do. Imagine when you're that little baby and you're crawling along and you get frustrated, right, because you can't get to what you need to do because it's on the table and you're going to need your height to do that, and you try and you keep falling back and you keep falling back. I can imagine the exhilaration that was felt right then when you took from being able to stretch up and grasp what was on that table that you couldn't do the day before. Again, a learned condition that if we do something and we want it bad enough, we will get it. Don't let the years, and other people, like Linda said, other things dull that blade, because you are amazing, 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 amazing. And no anyone or anything take that away from you. Linda, the last word is yours, my friend.
Okay, Mark. Well, I don't know who to give credit to for this, but it's a quote that I absolutely love, and it goes like this: "Fear knocked on the door, faith answered, and lo, no one was there." So I say to you, move forward in faith, belief, and expectation.
Wow, powerful stuff here. Again, we want to thank all of our listeners for spending this time with us. We are going to examine this a little bit more. We'll chat about it a little bit more as we go through the shifts. We want you to come on this journey with us. So, again, thank you very much, and good night, Linda.
Good night, Mark.